All right, welcome back, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm being joined by Carolyn Woodruff. Carolyn Woodruff is a preeminent North Carolina family lawyer, philanthropist, private airplane pilot, and dance legend. And basically, she's an all-around Renaissance woman. I'm excited to have her on the show. Carolyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bert. I'm glad to be here.
All right, so you're not like the ordinary run-of-the-mill lawyer that we have on the show. So I'm excited to talk to you about this. First, I want to get into how you became a dance legend. Talk about your, the dancing lawyer background.
Well, I got into dance when I walked into my home one day with my physician husband and had found out he'd moved out without telling me. So I was in the middle of a divorce. So I was handling divorce cases every day and finding myself in my own client's world. And it was very traumatic. A friend of mine said, Carolyn, you've got to get out of the doldrums, go on with your life. What's over is over. And that friend said, why don't you find out 5 things that you've never done before and always wanted to do, and start trying them. Find a new life, not leaving practicing law, but adding another avocation to it. So I thought about it for a while and I made my bucket list and I put 5 things on there: dancing, flying airplanes, scuba diving, motorcycles, and billiards. So when I started down that path, I took a few smoky billiards lessons and found out that that really was not my thing. I found out I loved flying airplanes. I took airplane lessons and have now passed 8 FAA exams, all the first time, and I'm a multi-engine instrument rated pilot. I fly a Baron. I also have Dusty Archer 180, Cherokee 180, and I love doing that. I skipped the scuba diving when I learned about in the pilot schools about nitrogen and the dangers of scuba diving. But dancing also really stuck. And I started taking dance lessons probably 10, 15 hours a week, and found out that my background from the South in Alabama, when dancing was a sin and something, you always want to do when it's not the thing that when it's the thing you're not supposed to do. So dancing stuck, and I started competing as a bronze dancer, silver dancer, gold dancer. And then I found my coach, Talia Tarsanoff, found some shows for Alosha Anatoly and I to be in New York City and also in Moscow, Russia, where they showcased world and US champions. Alosha Anatoly, who was originally from the Ukraine, and I've been now dancing together since 2006, and we've been in 8 world shows. We were also the United States show dance champions. So basically, it was how I refound myself after my own divorce.
You know what? That's incredible. And I think right there is a great takeaway. If you're experiencing some kind of loss or divorce, or maybe it's a business loss, whatever kind of loss, or maybe a life-changing event, you write down 5 things that you've always wanted to do but haven't done, your short bucket list, and go after it. What kind of a blessing in disguise. And not that anybody likes to get divorced, but I think that your friend's advice paid off.
I would totally agree with that, Bert. Totally agree. It just opened up so many new avenues not to be stuck in a mold of lawyer.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, the great thing about, going out there and is that you get to get out of your own headspace. You get to meet new people, and it helps things go as smoothly as things can go.
And how many lawyers can say that they've done 3 dance shows at the Kremlin Palace in Moscow, Russia?
I don't think any. I think you'd probably be the only one.
go into that situation.
Yeah, at least here in the U.S., maybe in Russia, they have lawyers that advance the Kremlin. But here in the U.S., you're probably the only one who can say you've been there 3 times. So that's unique. That's different. All right. So let me ask you this. Here you are. You kind of sit at the pinnacle, at the vanguard, if you will, of domestic law reforms in North Carolina, specifically in the city of Greensboro. How does this align with your convictions, especially now that you've gone through divorce yourself? So talk about this.
Well, I think that the pivotal point with divorce and religion is compassion. So when I think about conviction, I think about your religion. And I think that the universal language for the pivot point of those has to be compassion. And when I think about compassion, I think about all of the situations that people find themselves in family law. I think about the children right now today who were going to school, and we've got COVID going on, that were being, they got school lunches. They had oversight from a teacher. There's a lot of abuse going on, I believe, out there in homes that we need to have a lot of compassion for. I'm working with Family Services of Piedmont in Greensboro as a board member, and we kind of are calling COVID-19 for family law the abuser's dream, because the abuser has the family member and maybe the children, the spouse and the children in the home, and has them essentially captive with all of the social distancing and the stay home orders and that kind of thing. So with regard to that, it's a lot of opportunity out there for growth and how to deal with that particular kind of social problem. Of course, in my career since 1983 as a family lawyer, we have had the Equitable Distribution Act, which was enacted the year I graduated from law school at Duke. And that gave a lot of opportunities. It's interesting that the equitable distribution or the property division laws in the state of North Carolina were traded for the not voting for the Equal Rights Amendment for women, which I always find a curiosity.
Wait. So our politicians got together and said, hey, instead of giving them equal voting rights, we're going to do the equality.
The Equitable Distribution Act was traded for the vote for the constitutional amendment, the Equal Rights Constitutional Amendment for women. It's more than voting, because women had gotten the voting right back in the late 1919, 1920.
That's right.
But we didn't have rights to property in divorce. So if the man put all of the property in his name, the woman got nothing at the time of divorce.
Incredible.
And the trade-off was vote no on the Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution, but we'll give you some property.
Wow. It's amazing to me when you look at, the U.S., sometimes we forget our history. We forget that we have progressed or evolved really just like any other nation. I mean, again, there was a time, as you just mentioned, where women didn't have the right to vote, the suffrage movement. And now it boggles my mind that it took the event you're talking about, so women could have property in a divorce. It's just, I guess that's what happens when you have a male-dominated power base, right? They're just thinking like guys, and they're not thinking about their spouses.
Women usually got the children in divorces in those days, and they got a pittance of child support until the child support laws were enacted in North Carolina beginning in 1989, which essentially the federal government said that if states wanted highway and transportation money from the federal government, they had to enact child support guidelines. So we got that, and also men started getting more and more custodial rights of children. So now, a lot of men have 50-50 custody, and that's probably where most of the courts are starting if both parents want to show up for equal custodians. That wasn't true when we were dealing in the 80s with no child support guidelines, and women were just for the first time getting equal property rights in divorce.
Yeah, that's incredible. You know what? And I imagine you've seen a lot of change when it comes to family law, because as you mentioned, back in the day, it was the woman would typically have the custody of the children, but no property. Now we have both men and women getting some kind of maternity leave. Men have a more active role. I've seen men have a more active role with their children. It's very common now, not only to share custody, but I have a few friends who are male and they have full custody or sole custody of their children because the wife wanted to, just focus on her career. So things have changed dramatically.
A lot of men, and I represent a lot of men, I love representing fathers who want to be outstanding parents. And we are able to achieve custody for a lot of fathers, primary custody. And a lot of times it does have to do with women in wanting a career, an executive, a CEO, or some kind of highly paid executive in, for example, the pharma industry or other highly trades. But you also find addiction issues out there that give primary custody one way or the other. Addiction is a growing problem in family law.
Yeah, and that makes sense because addiction is a growing problem here. Just socially speaking, it's just a general problem. Let me ask you this: given the realities of the capitalistic society that we live in, what are the common marriage challenges that you have observed around education, gender? We talked a little bit about gender equality, but talk a little bit more about this.
To me, education is the key to gender equality. It's very hard to keep a person who is well educated from both having the self-esteem to consider themselves equal and from actually functioning as an equal person in a relationship. So where you get imbalance is when you have couples that have a wide range between the educational experiences that they've had. And that creates an imbalance that's a friction. And that imbalance can lead to domestic violence. It leads to divorce. It leads to just disharmony in the home. So to me, the pathway to gender equality, if you please, is education.
Yeah. Go ahead. I like that a lot. I think, education has proven as a great strategy to help people overcome poverty. Education, I like the way you're using it for equality. It is, when you open up somebody and somebody's mind and they're aware of some of the options available to them, they're able to make better choices. And I think education does that for a lot of people.
Yes, and I believe that there are a lot of nonprofits worldwide that are seeking education as a means for creating gender equality.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, kind of going back to some of the stuff that you talked about earlier about the perfect storm for some of this, isolation and abuse. I also want to talk a little bit about what you've seen, again, with the COVID lockdown. It's forcing married couples, who might have been contemplating divorce to either, I don't know, make amends or actually split. Have you seen, based on your experience, have you seen a spike in divorce cases being filed, or is it dropped? What's going on as far as the statistics?
I can tell you just from my own family law practice that there have been tremendous changes. In the first full month of COVID, I think divorce cases were down. In the second month of COVID, they were down, but not quite down as much as they were in the first month. In the third month, I think we had 6 times the new cases that we had in June of 2019. So it was 6 times the number of people. So for a practice my size, Woodruff Family Law Group, that has 8 attorneys, 5 family law specialists, a staff of 18, we would normally in a month have about 16 cases, new cases come through the door, about 2 for each of the attorneys. And of course, if you already have a full caseload, 2 new cases can be all that you really want.
Sure.
122 new cases in June.
Wow.
And it is replicating that in July.
That's incredible.
So it is an incredible spike. And that can be combined with now our courthouse in Greensboro, North Carolina, has been closed now for the 4th time, closed today for next week, because the courthouse has now been declared a cluster for COVID-19. So they're not holding any non-essential civil court, which they're still doing domestic violence court and first appearances. But the regular child custody case, the regular property division case, the regular temporary support hearings and those kind of things, they are not going on right now. We are now, the other change that's happened, though, some courts are being held with either Zoom or WebEx, and that actually has caught on quite well. But with the whole courthouse and the courtrooms closed, we were doing the WebEx hearings with the judge still on the bench with his or her computer, and it's just that the witnesses and the attorneys were remote. But without the judge being able to do that from the bench, from the courthouse, we're going to have a new invention of how that's done if this keeps going on and we can't figure out how to solve the COVID problem. But the COVID problem is causing marriages to break up. The imbalances were already there. I think that the domestic violence is already there, and COVID's caused financial strain on all the people, 50-something million are unemployed right now in the United States, last I heard. So those are financial strain causes divorce. And it's just really a sad situation for the American family.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Let me ask you this. There in where you practice, is mediation part of the process now, mandatory process when you're going through the divorce?
Mediation is mandated in all of North Carolina in 2 respects. All child custody cases have to be mediated with the court's mediator before you can ever be given a trial date. And probably 90% of the cases in the area of child custody are able to be mediated out. Now, in the area of financial mediation, that also is mandated, but it's a different system. You are required to hire certified mediators who also are lawyers, and you have to go through family financial mediation. And again, I think that the rate of closure with mediation is probably 90%. So that leaves the 10% of the worst cases in the courtroom still.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was going to ask you, but you kind of already answered that question. It's, as a divorce lawyer, do you like the mediation process? But it seems like you do.
Oh, I love the mediation process. And North Carolina has passed a new collaborative divorce law that was effective July 1, which I think that's where the parties, both sides, commit up front to try to keep the court system out of the situation. And
Gotcha.
it's another process. So what I think you're going to see, unless we can solve COVID faster than it seems like we're going to, is that there's going to be more emphasis on mediation. There's going to be more emphasis also on private arbitration. North Carolina has a Family Law Arbitration Act. So you can actually have a binding decision in a arbitration or rent a judge kind of format. And basically the parties can design that for themselves. So basically you're going to design your own divorce case mentality,
Yeah.
where you can use mediation, you can use arbitration, you can use collaborative law, and your last resort right now is the courtroom, which is the worst place ever for children, for child custody cases. Probably the worst place to resolve a financial dispute in a complex divorce. So, we're learning to use both technology and both alternate dispute resolution. And I think it's bigger than ever. And I think both using the technology and the alternate dispute resolution will improve the family law situation. I will say this, we're effectively doing the mediations with Zoom. I've been on Zoom mediations for 10 hours.
Wow.
Where you build your own rooms for mediation. I've done, of course, depositions with Zoom, but we're getting more and more able to use those kind of technologies as an assist, and it's a lot more efficient. So you have to be more prepared, but you don't have any travel time.
Right.
You don't really have the travel time, and you have to be prepared because your exhibits and all that have to really be lined up ahead of time. But it's been actually very fun to rely on the technology pretty heavily here.
Sure, sure. Well, one of the things that strikes me about mediation is that a lot of people want to vent their frustration. They want to have, quote, their day in court. And so I think mediation allows them to have that feeling to be able to vent. And sometimes mediation, back to, you stated earlier, that compassion is really what helps a divorce maybe get resolved on the best level. I think that mediation is, to me, a very compassionate way of resolving issues, as opposed to, like you said, getting in front of a judge that might be more by the book, less compassionate because he or she is going to go by the letter of the law, maybe. But now in mediation, it's less formal, and so I think you're able to spend a little bit more time working through these feelings that the court could care less about.
Yeah, most of the mediations in family law start with the mediator spending 45 minutes or an hour with each party, each side, and that's the time for the party to vent their frustrations. And you're right, a lot of times you can resolve divorce problems if you give somebody 45 minutes of somebody else's time who's more in a position, such as a mediator, to vent their gripes. And then it's out. We can go on now, and we can look at the money or the children in your best interest. But that's that venting process, and they need a third party. They've been venting to their lawyer, they've been venting to their therapist, but they need that person that's in the mediator or the arbitrator role to vent to. And that does solve a lot of problems.
Yeah. And let me tell you, I think that this is one of the smartest things that the court's ever done is mandate mediation. I think they do that for just about all cases from, small claims court all the way to complex litigation. I think that, at least in my experience, my opinion is that most lawsuits can be resolved if the parties would be willing to just humble themselves and talk, just kind of go through the process. But of course, you have let's say, a plaintiff that feels as though they've been betrayed, they feel as though, they deserve this or that, and they have their blinders on and they only want to see, blood. That's all they want. and that's sometimes very difficult to resolve. And of course, this is where a good lawyer and a good mediator can come in and help that person diffuse those emotions and let them see that, make them feel heard, and then also let them see that this is probably not the best, court isn't the best way to go. Let's get resolve this today. And, like you said, in a 10-hour or 5-hour mediation. I think mediation has become a fantastic tool.
I love mediation. And I think that it is, I too think that it's probably the best thing that has happened to family law, the mediation process. It's saving a lot of court time. And I think it's giving a client the chance to realize his or her own objectives rather than having those dictated by a person in a black robe. So
yeah,
you can design a plan better when you're in a friendly setting of a mediation.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, so let me ask you this, kind of put you on the spot here. As a woman in a male-dominated world, what can you candidly tell the inspiring women business owners about success and risk?
This might be a debatable answer, but my thought is forget you're a woman. You're a person first. And I think if all of America would look at that as, look at them, each person as a person, then we don't worry about sex equality, race equality. Every person should look at themselves as a person first. Now, that being said, I would also tell people to get as much education as you reasonably can and think and analyze, assess risk, pros, cons, then make a decision after you've done all of the thinking about it and live with it and make it work. I also would say be ready to pivot. In your analysis, things change, business changes. We certainly have seen something that's been a landmark change with what's going on in society now. So your success is going to depend on your ability to pivot yourself, your business into the right position. It might be that you're going to have to do more digital marketing than you've ever done before, because digital marketing is very, very important now.
Right.
And so much word of mouth, maybe that worked, maybe it still works, but you can't just rely on the way you did business 10 years ago right now, going into the future. You've got to reassess pros and cons right now and pivot into something that works in this world we're in today. Now, if we get vaccines and we are in a different situation next summer, maybe you can pivot back. But again, you need to list the pros and cons, look at your customer, look at your client, who do you serve, and figure out how do you serve them better. Because putting that person first and making them better off is always a way for business success.
Yeah, you know what, and that's a great answer. One of the things that I teach in my marketing class, that it's not about you, it's about the person you're trying to serve. It's getting in their head. What's keeping them up at night? What's the most important thing to them? And I love your idea of pivoting. A lot of the biggest companies that are around us today are around because they pivoted. And a lot of these big companies that are no longer around, Blockbuster, I'll use them as an example, they failed to pivot and they disappeared. So your answer I thought was fantastic. I love that. Let me ask you this. Many organizations, like the media, shape society's perceptions about awareness, self-awareness, if you will. What does self-awareness mean to you?
Self-awareness is about knowing myself, knowing what I believe and who I am, and then taking in the information that is around me and assessing it, much like my formula on business success. So it's very difficult here to talk about the media when I'm actually in the media right now, Bert. So you need to know that. But I think that you have to be very careful with most media, because I think investigating and reporting has slidden into the background, and commentating and opinions and all of that are at the forefront. I really wish we would have more investigative and reliable reporting in the media. I don't particularly trust the media, but what I do, I try to limit myself to a certain amount of time every day listening to the media, and I try to listen to a broad section of the television media, and then I use it to figure out what the topic of the day is to think about, not to accept the opinions of any of them, because the media, I mean, there's a lot of lies out there in the media. Let's just face it. And the other thing I do to try to get a balanced approach on it, on the weekends, I read the China Daily. I get it on my Kindle. I read The Guardian. I read The Times of London. So when you try to get a broader perspective and you can see what others are saying about the same topic, I think that you can figure out for yourself what may or may not be going on, and that still may not be what's going on. So um, that's the way I approach assessing the media, and I don't let it control who I am.
You know, one of the things, rightly or wrongly, that the Trump administration has coined is fake news. And I was talking to a group yesterday about fake news, and I have come to the conclusion that the biggest fake news that we all have to deal with is up here. You know, we take events and we filter them through our heads and we decide what it means to us, and that's great. But also, you know, you look at some of the things out there that people achieve or don't achieve, and that's based on how they, you know, feel about themselves. You know, you had mentioned earlier about somebody's self-esteem and their, you know, and increasing that education. And so we as humans, we are constantly talking to ourselves. We're filtering information. We're filtering what events mean. And I think that we have to guard ourselves against our own fake media or our own, you know, biases, because that is, I think, the biggest thing that at least trips me up on a regular basis. I just assume something, even though we're not supposed to assume, or I think that I know what the answer is, why maybe a person acted the way they did. Come to find out, I was completely wrong. And so we have to almost, what do you call it, reorient our self-talk, our thinking, and back to what you were talking about. You take this information in, and it may not mean what you think it means. It may not be exactly all of the truth. And so that's just the reality that we live in. So I like the fact that you're saying, hey, take this information in, maybe with a grain of salt, do some of your own research if you really want to find out, because there's, you know, just about everything is researchable nowadays. And, you know, sometimes the media, you know, they're trying to get eyeballs. They're not necessarily trying to deliver the truth. They're trying to get eyeballs because that's how they get advertisers and that's how they keep on the air. So sometimes, you know, we're all misled or we're captivated by a sensational headline, only to find out that the headline and the content were completely disconnected. It was just trying to get our eyeballs there. So I like your take on the awareness there.
So what I would say is that really the television news commentators that you get in the early evening and between, you know, 5 and 7 o'clock, it's really one big reality TV show for sensationalism. It's not news.
It is. You know, a lot of people aren't aware of this, but I guess it's been about 20 years. You know, the news department they used to be kind of separate from the network that they were involved with. and they had their own independence, the Walter Cronkites, if you will, of our time. And then, of course, as these media conglomerates came in, they just said, hey, the news is no longer independent. This is all about entertainment. Your take on this being reality TV is dead on. You know, and I think one of the things that you can see about the media that I find very distasteful is they will, for lack of better terms, hyper-focus on, let's say, a story, and they get it out there. And then if they're wrong, it's just a little blurb on their website. Sometimes if they're taken to court, they will say, hey, we made a mistake, we sincerely apologize, and then they move on. They don't take the same enthusiastic focus to say, hey guys, we were wrong, let's correct this. We said it was XYZ, it turned out to be 1, 2, 3, you know, and there's more information on our website, please go there. You know, because it is reality TV. I mean, it's just, you know, it's not always accurate.
You know what I think it's best for? I think it's best for what women should wear on television. It's really more of a fashion show.
What looks good on TV will look good in the boardroom, the courtroom, the dining room, or whatever. So I think that's a good point. You know, and what's so funny too is, again, with this COVID stuff, a lot of these people are working from their homes. More than one individual anchor has been caught with, you know, let's say wearing a nice, let's say, suit on top and shorts on the bottom, kind of a, you know, and I thought that was just, to me, was a great way of a great analogy or metaphor for the news. It looks good on top, but you're not really sure what's on the bottom of all that.
That's happened in some remote courtrooms too. And the order says you have to be fully dressed to be in a WebEx or Zoom courtroom in North Carolina. So people have been caught. I think even one person was caught going to the bathroom, and it was heard on Zoom in a proceeding.
Oh, great! The what do you call it? The realities of today's technology. Yes, you have to take the mic off if you're going to the potty. You know, that's happened not only on Zoom meetings, WebEx, but even in the, what do you call it, in the newsrooms. We've had situations like that. Carolyn, I want to pop up your website right here real quick in case somebody wants to reach out. If they have more questions, they can reach out at woodrufflawfirm.com. I've been to your website multiple times. There's literally tons of resources there for somebody in North Carolina, Greensboro, that may want to get some more information, that is contemplating a divorce, that can go there and get some help. And I've had so much fun getting to know you on the show today.
Bert, it's been just an absolute pleasure to work with you. I've loved doing the show and working with you on this. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.